So welcome, our beloved, brilliant colleague, Amma. We so appreciate your consistent solidarity and visionary leadership. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks and acknowledging our creator. We acknowledge all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Amma, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Oh, amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. My name is Amma Gyamfowa. I was born and raised in Toronto, but I'm of Ghanaian descent, and I'm currently here. I do like a 6-month on, 6-month off kind of thing here. And I'm many things. I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. But of course, many people know me for a lot of the work that I do. So I'm a mental health therapist and a social worker, but I try to make and create different ways of talking to, connecting through our mental health, but also embracing our culture and our identity, especially for those of us who grew up in places like the Americas, places like the UK. Sometimes we can become disconnected in one way or another from our culture. And so one of the things that I try to do and incorporate in my mental health work is talk about culture, identity, and anti-Black racism and how all of those things can impact us. So really looking at our cultural identity as a source of strength as opposed to some sort of deficit.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I appreciate the way you provided such context on the depth of your work, but also the ways you're innovating using practices that we've used since time immemorial and using culture as a censoring piece. So once again, I appreciate your leadership. My next question is, what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
Ooh, these are good questions. Okay, what's inspiring me right now? I think what's inspiring me right now is seeing that there's just such an ongoing push and investment to our communities, right? And I think, the ongoing collective work that we're all doing, honoring the ancestors that have came before us, and even, the people that have done, as you said at the start, a lot of unpaid work, unpaid labor, activism. I think that really inspires me because I know that it's not all for no reason, right? I know that I'm here as the investment of other people. And so I think one of the things that really grounds and inspires my work is knowing that the change can happen, although sometimes it takes quite a bit of time, decades, centuries, right? But I think for me, that's one of the biggest things that inspires me. One of the things that keeps me up at night is at the same time how long this work takes, right? I mean, I think that the thing that inspires me is also the thing that I struggle with the most about how much time and effort do we have to place in before we're able to see any changes. But again, nothing is changed overnight. And if we think about the fact that we stand on the shoulders of 1,000 people, right? Then we can understand that, yes, there might be times where we need rest or breaks, but the work is continuous and ongoing.
Indeed, as my beloved sister says, rest is a form of resistance. And
Absolutely.
and my beloved
Yeah.
brother, Paul Taylor, he recently did a keynote for us. He spoke about joy, play, and rest, and the importance of these things. So
Yeah.
definitely, I give thanks for those words and those sentiments and your brilliance as always. So my next question: what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Yeah. Some of the challenges and barriers, I think, is the consistent investments, right? I know you and your work does a lot about like, how do we fund impact, right? And I think one of the things that many of us have seen is that sometimes programs or initiatives will get funded for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but then what happens, right? And so I think a constant barrier is how do we continue to invest in these programs, initiatives, especially in my work as a mental health practitioner. And I think one of the things that I consistently see is that sometimes, specifically, I often am trying to invest in Black mental health. And one of the things that will happen is that Black folks will get kind of grouped up with all other racialized people. And although we have a lot of connectors in our experiences are also vastly different. And so the approaches are different. And so I find that one of the things that ends up being a challenge is the fact that we need to be able to have really directed initiatives that are specifically focusing on Black mental health in order to address some of the challenges that are facing, but also to highlight the strengths, highlight the cultural nuances, highlight the things that are affirming and are healing for Black folks, right? Because I think sometimes we, in our desire to want to try to reach everybody, we actually are missing a really key part of who we're trying to reach out to in the first place.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you. So do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work you'd like to share?
Yeah, so one of them is to continue to do an ongoing workshops and engagements, right? So one of the signatures I have is fried cocoa for the mind and soul. And, you're smiling because you already know what fried cocoa is. And for those who don't know, in Ghana, we call fried cocoa or fried plantain, excuse me, fried cocoa. And one of the reasons why I use it is so that it can be a real tool for us in speaking about our mental health and kind of breaking down the stigmas. So, whether you call it fried plantain, because I know I've been told on many occasions I'm not saying it right. But, whether you kind of don't know, like the reality is that plantain for a large portion of the Black diaspora really is a staple in our foods. And so using things like food to be able to merge our conversations about mental health and wellness is something that's really important to me. And so I'm trying to get to basically 1,000 people that have went through this workshop so that we can continue to have conversations about mental health that are not stigmatizing and that allow everybody to recognize that they have and are holding mental health, but then also to take away some of the challenges that people might feel or experience when they're considering it, right? Because sometimes people will tell you, you're not depressed, you just need to go to church, for example. And that is not something that's helpful when people are really struggling and going through difficulties. So I use that as one of my priorities at this present moment.
Yes, so many of my sisters have been through the workshop, rave about the workshop, build about the workshop. We've amplified the workshop. So if you have not, do you have a link to your website? I just want to big it up right now quickly. What's your website?
Yeah. So the website, excuse me, is Womanist Healing, WOMANIST healing.com. And then on the workshops part, you can go directly there and connect with us on being able to book one for your organization or your team.
Indeed. If I had the ability, I'd give it some Source Magazine 5 mics. You know what I mean?
Yes, please.
Or 5 stars on whatever platform, or 10 out of 10. But yeah, no, we appreciate your leadership in terms of, once again, censoring justice, access, inclusion, diversity, decolonization, and equity in the mental health space. But not just that, making it culturally relevant and responsive and appropriate. And I think that when you're breaking down these myths and the stigmas associated with mental well-being in our community, we have to find cultural anchors, not just as a hook, but as a way to ensure people understand the importance of this. So once again, I just appreciate, I love innovation, I love creativity, and I love things that work. And this session works. I have so many people in my network that speaks to the fact that the efficacy of this work. So once again, I appreciate your leadership, my sister. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
It's hard to put it into one thing. I think one of the main goals that we consistently have is that people have access, right? Because for a long time, and even now, oftentimes the medical system, the health system doesn't feel accessible to us. It doesn't feel accessible to our needs. So one of the things that I think all of us are trying to champion is the ways that we can make access really available to Black communities. And the other piece in connection to what you were saying about the keynote that recently happened is that we have like very full lives. So you noticed when I introduced myself, I didn't just say, oh, my name's Amma, I'm a therapist. I talked about, all of the other roles that I have in my life. I think one of the things for me is that people are well, right? Holistically, mental, emotional, spiritual, and whatever ways that means is a very important thing for me because, we know we live very busy lives. We have all this technology, and yet like we are the source, right? We need to be pouring into ourselves in ways that allow us to feel enriched for our own well-being. And then also so that we can use that enrichment that we are feeling and experiencing and kind of radiating it outward to our communities.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah. I think one thing is to honestly think about how you can continue to be a safe space for the people that are in your life, Of course, earlier I talked about the challenges around, investing in mental health resources for us. But I think one of the things that we consistently have to think about is, am I also a safe space for my brothers and my sisters? And if I'm not, what are the things that I can do to better show up for them, right? And that doesn't mean that you're going to be a therapist to them, right? But it means, how do I show up for you? Can I get you a meal when I know you've been really stressed, right? Can I be the listening ear that is in your life that you can depend on? And then the other thing, I think one of the things that's really important that I talk about in my workshops is the fact that we don't need to be in a current state of crisis to access support. I think sometimes we think that right now you need to be in, having all of these multiple challenges happen in order for us to get support. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. Last but not least, I want to name that community is a part of healing, right? That there's some work that you end up doing on your own, that you venture out on your own with, but science and our ancestors have always known that when people are connected in community, they're actually able to thrive in a lot of different ways. And so even if that's 2 people, 3 people in your life, I really want people to reach out to the communities that they're a part of, because you can also find healing there.
Ashe, 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 Madasi Papa. I can't thank you enough for your leadership, your tenacity, your resilience, the candor that you bring to this work, but most importantly, just the innovation. And once again, I just give thanks for all that you do for so many, our beloved sister. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began this conversation, by this interview, by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion and compensation. We give thanks to all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our elders, the pretty stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Amma, thank you so much. I appreciate you, fam.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.